Hello and welcome everybody to our episode of Let's Talk Training. And this one is It's Their Game, Win Training Buy-in from Your Executive and Management Teams. Now we do have to apologize for the live episode. We ended up with some technical glitches that forced us to re-record this episode. We thought the information was valuable enough that you would probably want us to do a re-recording. So that's what Lori and I are here to do today. But to tell you a little bit about the program today, we understand that buy-in from your executive and management teams is critical to the success of any of your training programs, initiatives. And when we say buy-in, we're not talking about getting them to sign off on an investment that they're making, although sometimes those can go hand in hand. But what we're really talking about is their emotional buy-in, their support, their visible buy-in, and being there and supporting this training initiative from start to finish. So with that being said, if you don't have their buy-in or their support, sometimes it can feel like you're playing on different playing fields or even on different teams. So we felt like this would be a really good analogy to use on the baseball theme. And this was Lori's great idea. So I'm going to let Lori talk to you a little bit about this analogy before we move forward.
Okay. Well, baseball fans out there know that our season's just around the corner and we're about to wrap up spring training, so we're all getting excited about that. But we chose the baseball analysis not just because of timing, but because we do see this as a great way to view our business. I mean, it takes such a variety of talents and areas of focus to make us successful, and it truly is a team effort, so why not think of it as a team sport? And with baseball, every team member has an area of responsibility that they alone are delivering on out in the field, but affects the team as a whole. And we are, as trainers, we're like coaches. We're responsible for making sure the team has, the tools, the resources, and the experience or practice time necessary to make it work. And our executives or operating supervisors are crucial partners in this process, and they need to be out there on the field with us, just like in baseball. And we think that our challenge is sometimes getting them to do that, to be out there on the field with us and making this their ball game. So that's kind of why we chose this particular analysis.
Great. Thank you, Lori. That's awesome. Okay, so before we get started with the meat of today's episode, we want to quickly introduce ourselves. My name is Jana Muma, and I'm the Director of Learning and Development here at Grace Hill, and I am approaching my 5-year anniversary in May. Prior to that, I spent 20 years with a large multifamily housing company, and I've been on-site, I've been technical training, I have been Vice President of Learning and Development. I've overseen maintenance training, so I have walked in your shoes. I understand the challenges of getting the support and the buy-in from your executive team. So I really hope that some of my experience you'll find helpful today on how to get their buy-in. And as Lori was mentioning on the baseball theme, I've done it all. I've been the pitcher, I've been the catcher, I've been a team player through it all. So I think it's just a great analogy and it's so much fun. So Lori, you want to tell them a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Laurie Allen, and I have been a training account manager here at Grace Hill for over 6 years now. Previously, and I'm not going to say how many years, Jana, I was in multifamily. You all are out there, most of you, and served in various roles in marketing and training, and most recently was an operations executive. So I've played most of the roles we're looking at today as well, and because I've been on both sides of this fence, I'm hoping that will aid me in providing you a variety of perspectives about what we're hoping to accomplish here with our executive teams. Just some quick facts about Grace Hill. We are the leading multifamily education provider offering apartment industry-specific training, not just in our courseware, but in a lot of our learning objects that we have available to you on our website. And we also have what we call Vision, which is our learning management system that tracks and allows customization of your training and education for your associates. So that being said, I think we're ready to jump right into our subject at hand, Jana.
I think we are. Thank you, Lori. Okay, so we have to start with the basics. We want to make this simple and easy for you to understand and be able to walk away armed and ready to go and get that executive buy-in. So we're starting with the very basics, such as the definition of buy-in. And this came out of the Webster Dictionary. So the acceptance and willingness to actively, I should have made that one green too, actively support and participate in something such as a proposed new plan or policy. And for us, we can just add on there, such as a proposed new training initiative. That's what we're talking about when we talk about buy-in. And this is just so critically important, and they have to be actively involved from start to finish, as I mentioned earlier. And let me tell you a little bit on why it's so important. It is absolutely fundamental for the success of your training programs. Their performance is at stake. I mean, if training succeeds, then the executive team wins, right? I mean, that's what our common goal is. It builds trust and commitment, and not just from all of the players or employees, so to speak, but it builds trust and commitment between you, the executive, the management teams, and all of your players. So getting that camaraderie is really, really important. It ensures that changes stick after training ends. I know tons of you are faced with this challenge. I know it was one of my greatest challenges. Once we train them and send them back out to the field, how do we know if they're really hitting that ball like we taught them how to hit that ball? We're not sure. So involving your executive and management teams in this whole process can really help with that follow-up stage and ensuring that training actually sticks after the training ends. And these last two, pretty self-explanatory. It turns training into performance, which is our ultimate goal, and builds a team with a common goal. So this is why getting that executive buy-in is just so important. And at the end of this episode, you will have the ability to click on the PDF to download, which will give you access to the slide deck that we have today, as well as a lot of additional resources and links. And what made me think of it is there's one in there that's talking about executive buy-in is critical to any training need. It's a very good article. So just know that that PDF contains more than just these slides, but some additional resources for you. But now we are going to jump into what positions do trainers play? Lori?
Very well, and Jana mentioned a few of these earlier, but as trainers, we know you guys are out on the playing field of property management, and you have many, many roles. And sometimes you play them one at a time, sometimes all in the same game, but in terms of baseball, they're all very key positions. So the first and foremost one we think of is you are the pitcher. You have to pitch your training opportunities or objectives to the executive team if you need their buy-in, and also you have to pitch yours as well as theirs to the associates that you're training. But you're also the catcher. When they miss the ball, you're the one that's there to catch it. You have to revise it. You have to put it back into play, so to speak. And if they strike out, you're there to help determine why and how to fix it. And then finally and foremost, as we mentioned earlier, you are indeed the coach. You're giving them the game plan, and you're making sure that they understand it and that they're abiding by it. But you know what? Your executives play a lot of roles too, don't they? And the one that is key to me as an executive is that you are the umpire. Basically, the executives ultimately call the shots. They have to officiate the game and enforce the rules. They make judgment calls on plays, and unfortunately, they get to handle the disciplinary actions. You don't always have to do that. And of course, we don't always agree with their calls. But we do need to all be playing by the same rules. And training provides that rule book, and it needs to be right, and we all need to agree on it. But they are also coaches, and that's really what is key to us today. It would be an easy role for them to assist you in coaching. That's something they do already, and we need them as assistant coaches. And you might think about this in terms of baseball as well, because there are many assistant coaches out there on the field. There's, the pitching coach, the hitting coach, the bench coach, the base coaches, and each of them have an area of responsibility that they're assigned to that happens to be their particular expertise or responsibility. And of course, in many cases, the executives are the owners of the team. I mean, they want the team to be successful because they have a vested interest, so it's definitely their game. And we want to look at who might be the batter then. Well, That's the learner. So when they're at bat, that's really where the learning is put to the test. Am I right? And these players are also out there on the field in, defensive roles. They are serving their role on defense, and they all have a certain area that they have to, take care of. But we like to look at it in terms of them at bat when it talks about connecting with the training initiatives, because that's what's being pitched to them. And we all know the best defense in the world doesn't mean a thing if you can't score, and you have to hit the ball to do that. So basically, guys, it's made up of all of you. Trainers, executives, management team, and the learners or associates. You all together make this team, and you need to all understand the game. You need to all be committed, and you all need to want to win. So together as a team, you really must visibly and, yes, physically support each other on the playing field to be successful. I don't mean you all have to be touching, but you do get the idea. So Jana, now that we have kind of identified the players, can you help us look at how, the executive team comes into play here?
Absolutely, Lori. Thank you. I just love how all of those different positions, it just makes so much sense, and it's just fabulous to hear. Okay, so we're going to talk about executive involvement now. But before we can really talk about that, we need to understand what phases do we really want them involved with. So we have, of course, put a baseball analogy around this, and we are going to look at this from a baseball perspective first and know that we want the executive management teams involved in each three of these bases in order for you to get a grand slam. So from a baseball perspective, let's look at it like determining your needs. That's the point when you would determine your team name, pick out your players, assign their positions, schedule practices, start scouting any competition that's out there. You go to second base, we're calling that develop content. That's where you pick the uniforms and the colors. You choose your mascot. You start to begin your practice. Third base, when you deliver, you play the game, and you play it to win. No other reason to play a game, right? And then if you have executive management involvement in all three of those, you definitely have a grand slam. So flipping that over now to a little bit more of a training perspective, those of you who are familiar with any instructional design model, be it ADDIE or SAM, or there's plenty of them out there, they're all pretty much basic and will cover each one of these components. So we tried to make this simple and less confusing than sometimes the ADDIE and SAMs can be. So basically, first base, you have to determine the needs. The needs assessment, skill gap analysis. Lori said earlier, maybe somebody, gave you a learning objective that you have to now put a plan together for, or maybe it's something that you've done a needs assessment on, have identified a skill gap, and it's something that you want to actually pitch. Second base, it's when you develop the content. That is the time where you're determining the delivery method. Is it going to be best as an e-learning, a webinar, an in-person, a video? There's so many different methods to deliver that training in. So you make those decisions there, and you begin the design look and feel of the content. So then you get that completed. Third base is actually when you deliver the training, and this is where you conduct the class, you conduct the webinar, you roll out the video, the e-learning program, and you certainly cannot forget to follow up. We talked about that earlier and why getting executive buy-in is so critical, and that follow-up piece is extremely critical because that's when we typically we drop the ball, so to speak. So, and that is really important to make sure that we're changing that behavior, not only in class, but once they go back into their regular routine. So again, all three bases, they're involved in all three of those components. You are just going to hit a grand slam, and it will ensure your success. So we're going to look at each one of these bases a little bit further and tell you how you can get involvement, give you some tips and ideas on how to involve the executive team and management teams in each one of these bases. So Lori, I'm going to pass that to you for first base.
Hey, we're getting to first base here. That's great. This is where the needs assessment and skill gap analysis take place, as we mentioned. And what we're referencing here is the research associated with planning your training strategies. And that will greatly depend on the company's culture and initiatives and your current player strengths and challenges. So, what do you have in place that's working and what isn't? And probably as a trainer, you have, as Jana mentioned, one of two scenarios that have taken place that have caused the need to provide training. You were either thrown a fly ball or you were catching. If you were thrown a fly ball, that probably means that you have been asked by management to put together a training initiative based on what they're recommending that you need. And if you're pitching, you're telling management that you have determined that there is a need for training. Now, either way, you need to conduct this needs assessment. This is where you're going to identify those strengths and weaknesses. You're going to plan your practice or your game schedule. You're going to scout your competitors or resources, what's working, what's not, and include the executives in this process because it should actually start with them. Actually, again, it needs to be their game plan. And if it's at their request, it may be easier, but you still need to do the assessment because you got to ask yourself some key questions in this stage. First off, is it a true training need? Will the education process lead to improved performance that you all are determining is necessary? You still want to go through this assessment to determine if it is truly a training issue. We all know that sometimes you're being asked to do training and it's not necessarily training that's going to solve the issue. It may be an operations issue, a management oversight issue, it might be an HR related issue. It has something to do with, and the training is not the answer. So let's make sure we've clarified that first. Second, linking it to the company goals is critical. This is where you're really going to gain buy-in, especially from your upper management folks. Make sure that this is linked to what your company deems is an important aspect of performance. Have you scouted? Scouting old programs you've conducted in the past or others that are available out there that you might be able to customize for your company. What are you missing? What succeeded or failed in the past? Again, do you have bench strength? Or maybe you just have some bench warmers out there and you need to make sure that whatever training you're going to do is going to be effective for the team that you're working with. And again, look at those competitors and see what they have that might be of value for you to use. Then our last one is survey says. We think surveys and interviews are so helpful in this stage of the game. You should involve the whole team and survey, not just learners, but support folks and get a good sampling of what people think about the training initiative you're proposing or you're suggesting. Now, we've got a link down here to SurveyMonkey. We suggest SurveyMonkey. It's free. We use it. And I say it's free for like 100 respondents can be sent a 10-question survey for free in a free version. And they're also, they also have some pricing points, and the pricing goes up depending on how intricately you use it. But it's still relatively cheap. I think it starts at like $26 a month. So we definitely recommend that survey or some sort of survey component that you use as you're assessing your needs. And of course, whether you were thrown that fly ball as a training request or you're pitching on your own, you still need to understand how to throw that ball. So, Jana, you want to talk about the pitch or maybe coach us on how to throw that ball?
I would be happy to, Lori. Okay, as Lori said, it is time to pitch. So whether you were thrown that fly ball or you're pitching something of your own, you still have to pitch your recommendation to the executive team. So I'm going to give you a few tips here when you do go in to make that pitch. The first one is no wimpy words. You have to be strong, confident, and eliminate those wimpy words. I'm going to give you two examples here to tell you a little bit more about what I'm talking about. So example one would be the goal we're trying to accomplish is a 10% increase in leasing and closing ratios by implementing this training program. The goal we're trying to accomplish is. Or number two would be we will see a 10% increase in closing ratios by implementing this training program. Two is obviously the better choice, and there's a couple reasons for it. Basically, we're trying is wimpy. Those are the wimpy words I'm talking about. We will is much more powerful. And it's also shorter. The other sentence is kind of lengthy and, goes on. This one is short, concise, and to the point. And that's what your executive team members want to hear. Now, and don't forget to practice. You have to rehearse for this. Don't walk in there blind after, not reading through your notes or understanding what you're doing. I'm sure most of you would not do that, but I mean, really practice. Get up in front of a room and pretend you're pitching this information to the team. Maybe you can have some of your trainers sit in the room or fellow trainers, or maybe you all go in and pitch together. But anyway, it is very important to practice. And it is just like playing a game here. You want to win, so you better practice. I'm pretty sure there's not many baseball teams that win without practice. Okay, so then keep it short and sweet. Their time is valuable. We know that. Your time is valuable. We know that as well. And anticipate their questions. Try really hard to avoid training jargon. They don't understand it. We can talk in the SME for this particular piece of it is going to be so-and-so, and we're going to have this person sponsor it. And, the Addy design model, I'm going to get through to, don't speak in those acronyms and training terms. They don't understand it. They don't want to have to understand it. They want to know, how is it going to impact me, the company, the bottom line? So you need to anticipate their questions as if you were walking in their shoes. And I think you just need to, really rehearse on how to speak their language. Okay, so here's the catch. The catch, you have to put it in writing. You want an agreement, a commitment to shake on it. It is so critical to get this in writing, and it doesn't have to be formal. It can be very informal. It can be a Word document. It can be an email. If you do design documents, even better for them to sign off on each phase of the design document process. But you do want their signature, so to speak, or agreement in writing somehow. I know that takes a little bit more time, but I've given you an example here that hopefully will help, and feel free to steal this and customize it to fit your training initiative and your company a little bit better. I know you can all read the screen, but I'm going to read through this with you real quick. Thank you all for your time today. So this is after, let me set the stage a little bit better. This is after you have just pitched to the executive team on a training initiative. Whether, you caught the ball or were thrown it, whatever, you have just pitched. Here's what we need to do. It's my recommendation or our recommendation. So here's the follow-up email. Thank you for your time today. I know you have busy schedules, and I'm excited. Notice we all agree is underlined and highlighted with the training need that we uncovered. So now you've just told them, and it's kind of getting that team feeling. We all just agreed this is the need. As a team, another key word, we will work together to develop content and deliver training and ultimately share success. Another powerful phrase there, we all want to share in the success of this training program. I have summarized our agreement below. And again, keep it short and sweet. Training needs, so I'm just going to use the example. I know it's not the greatest example in the world, but training needs, increase leasing closing ratios by 10%. We've determined that's what it is. Time frame. We anticipate it's going to take us 3 months to develop the content, 1 month for piloting the program, and we'll be ready to roll in 5 months with the date out there. Involvement details. We agreed today and expect you to be involved. You're going to do that video for us that you promised you'd do. You're going to do that opening session. You're going to be involved in the design part of just a quick review, and detail out the involvement, and then identify your expected results. For this one, it would be, closing ratios go up by 10%. They're pretty easy, but a lot of them are much more complicated than that. And then your measurements. How are you going to measure it? Again, this is an easy one because you pretty much have a lot of reporting capabilities that can tell you those closing ratios. But when you get into soft skills like leadership or conflict management or something like that, those are very difficult to measure, but they can be measured. So you just want to figure out that measurement component prior to rolling this out so that you're ready, because it's really good to have a before and after. And Lori's going to talk to you a lot more about this in a couple of slides here. So with that being said, I hope you find that beneficial and it helps you. And we are going to take it on to second base, Lori.
Hey, so now we're running to second. Yahoo! Well, again, this is where we determine the delivery method, design the materials. And it's important to keep your executive team and your management folks involved in this phase because you don't want to waste your time building something if it's not the right vision. You want to make sure whatever you're delivering is exactly what they're expecting. And you want to deliver content and information as efficiently as possible. In terms of baseball, you don't want to go into those extra innings. You want to end the game on time, and you want to, if you build it, you want them to come. And this phase probably has the least actual involvement from your executive team, so you really have to work harder to keep them mentally involved. And communication is probably the key to this phase. So just to keep them involved, Jana gave you a great insight to a pregame planning method. Give them a timeline up front of what steps you're going to be taking, when each is going to be completed, and what the final results of each step will be, as well as obviously the end result. So you want to provide them that upfront game plan or timeline of what they can expect you to be accomplishing during this process. When we talk about instant replays, we're talking about involving them at the end of each inning. Provide them a progress report, make sure that they understand what's on track, what isn't, and if they're holding you up in any way, make sure that they're aware of that. Again, if you're soliciting other coaches to help you with, because they have certain areas of specialty that is what you're actually focused on in your training, then you want to make sure they're being held responsible for their portion or commitment. And those instant replays are going to provide you an opportunity to remind them and keep them focused and on point. Ongoing coaching, we're talking about here, providing test groups maybe to review and evaluate each step as you proceed, helping you make adjustments along the way and making sure that you're staying on track with what it is that you're ultimately going to deliver. And then when we talk about keeping the team spirit, if you have timelines involved that would involve their time maybe on conference calls or meetings or phone calls or what have you, where you're getting some feedback, make sure those are short, sweet, and to the point. Again, we know they don't have a lot of time, so we just want to make that brief. We don't want to waste their time with this, but we do want to keep them enthusiastically involved. So keep that team spirit going along the way. And guys, for your executives, you're probably looking for two different levels of participation from them in this phase two. Your executive team, maybe you don't need a lot of involvement from them. You've got their buy-off in the beginning. You don't really need a lot of feedback. You don't need to involve them in the intricate details. They just need to know about the end result, that you're meeting their expectations. So for them, you want to keep it brief and to the point, bottom line and only. Obviously, in every step, you want to remind them of the agreed upon objectives so that they see you're staying focused on that. But be very brief regarding your design or your proposed delivery methods. You just want to keep them abreast at each inning. Communicate the importance of their feedback, though. You need to maintain their support and continue to get their buy-in. Because you're going to want their buy-in even more importantly in the final phase of delivery, which we're going to talk about in a minute. So give them a lot of opportunities to continue that positive affirmation as you requested, as you suggested, as you proposed, so that you're getting those soft closes throughout the process. You want to be sure that you provide them the opportunity to respond. You ask them to communicate to you immediately if there's anything that they have questions about or have further suggestions. But don't wait for them. Keep moving forward. You're just keeping them informed. Now, you also have another type of involvement, which may be your assistant coach involvement or the upper management folks that you have playing this game with you. That might be a little more labor intensive because you need them to communicate, content to you. And you need to tell them what's going on, but in many cases, you also need their input and expertise to move forward. So for these folks, you're going to need more time, more involvement. And I highly recommend that you keep stroking the ego as you go through this process and make them totally aware of how valuable they are, how important they are to the keys to the success of this. And again, you want them to know the objectives are being met, but in turn, they may have to meet some of yours. You need them to provide you with feedback, and you may have to wait for them to move forward. So keep that timeline in front of them. And you may also need them to help you by piloting a program or maybe testing a system or delivery method You may want them to proof or even provide you with content. So, you may also need them to sign off on the material that you're putting together. Some examples of the way that you might be able to get them to pilot or test certain things. If you're looking at some online training or learning object, have them take it first and give you feedback. If it's a webinar, provide the webinar content to them as observers or audiences. If it's an instructor-led training, the same way, have them attend the training in a student role. If you're putting together some sort of mentoring process, mentor them through the process and let them give you feedback as you go along. So again, it's very much a team effort through this process with those that are partnering with you. So hopefully that will help you get their buy-in and get their involvement. So Jana, I think we're about ready to slide into third.
I think that sounds good, Lori. Let's take it on to third. Okay, so this is where we deliver the training, and this is a very important phase of the game with their involvement. This is where they really need to get physical and visible to the teams. Start with that famous first pitch. Have your CEO or president throw that first ball. It would be a great way to do it, but we are going to quickly run through some different ideas here that we have on how to get them involved when you're at the delivering phase. We've talked about first base, we've talked about second base, we know how their involvement will work. Now we're going to look at third base and delivering the training. So obviously attending training. If they can sit there and be a participant, just like Susie next to him that's brand new with the company, what kind of powerful message does that send? Wow, our CEO takes training, or our president, or our vice president, or regional manager, any of them, even the property manager. It just sends a very powerful message that they're attending training, so it must be important. Teach modules. Have your regional managers, vice presidents, your CEOs, OOs, anybody teach different modules or sections of a course. If this is online webinar training, that's fine. It still works. In-person training, even better. If they're busy and they say, I can't teach a whole module for an hour, I can't do that. Have them come in and just welcome employees in the morning. Thank you for joining us today. We're happy that you're here. We find this program to be extremely valuable and critical to the success of our company. And give them a kolache, give them some breakfast. You might entice them a little bit. If that doesn't work, entice them for lunch. Tell them you'll give them lunch if they come in, if it's a full day class. And they can speak if they want at lunch, but even just, again, like the attending training, even if they just come in and do casual conversations, hey, I'm David, I'm the CEO of the company, and what's your name? Oh, Susie, nice to have you with us. I'm glad you joined the company. Even those casual conversations can be very powerful, and sometimes you may have to coach your executives on doing this. Some may be comfortable with it, some may not be. In today's busy world, we've already said 10 times through this episode, we know their time is, really, really stretched thin. So videos are a great way to involve them in it. And you can do these. What I like about this is it's on their time, their schedule, when they have the time to do it. So they could do a welcome video for new hires. They can do a short, simple video for a new training initiative that you're rolling out. Maybe it's a new software, whatever the case may be, but and you may decide that you want to get somebody professional in to video it if it has a long shelf life. If you plan on your onboarding program to really last a long time with minor changes to it, then it may make sense to have somebody professional come in and do it. But if it's something, just a new training initiative and something that we've uncovered a need for, and we think it's going to be short-lived, once it's fixed, it's gone, then you can use your iPhones or video cameras there's so many of them now out there that are clear and professional and make it easy. You'd be very surprised at how professional you can make it look with absolutely no cost involved. So if they can't welcome them, they can't join for lunch, have them come in and wrap it up at the end of class. Maybe it's 3 or 4 o'clock, and just have them pop in and say, thank you so much for joining us today. Again, reiterate the importance of this particular training initiative, and you just wanted to personally thank them. And last but not least, we have said this a couple of times, the follow-up. They can actually be involved in the follow-up. And to simplify this for them, you can create an email that says, thank you for attending, XYZ class. We're so happy that you were there. We wanted to follow up with you and see if you feel as though this has made any impact into your daily activities. Do you feel like it has, given you the tools and resources you need to be a better leasing professional, community manager, maintenance associate? And you can type that up for them and say, here, if you would send this, make any edits you want, and they can send it out a month or 60 days after the training. What a great way to make the associate go, wow, my CEO's following up on me. And it's a very simple process for them to do. So if you get their involvement in all of those bases, first, second, and third, then you definitely have a grand slam. But that grand slam can actually be revoked, or I guess what would it be, Lori? A foul? So you don't want to make a foul and get that grand slam revoked. And Lori's going to talk to you about how this can happen. You just don't want to drop the ball.
Absolutely not. So, yeah, you can't get called out at home, I guess is one way of looking at it.
Yeah, okay, yep.
Don't drop the ball. As we say here, you can't manage what you don't measure. That's an old management adage that is very accurate. I always believed that how do you measure it is very important. You can't manage for improvement if you don't measure to see what's getting better and what isn't. So if you want to continue to earn that respect and maintain that partnership with your executives and management teams, you need to speak their language when it comes to measuring the success of any of your training initiatives. You got to measure results. Hopefully a lot of you understand or know somewhat about a baseball box score, but once again we kind of pull in that baseball analysis. The box score approach is what I would suggest using because it deals specifically with statistics and averages to measure performance. And you want those statistics or averages to be based on obviously what's important to your organization. So think about how your company or the executives measure performance in your organization. What are your key performance indicators in your organization? You probably know what they are. They probably speak about them a lot. Obviously, everybody talks about return on investment or ROE, return on expectations, but what else is out there? You probably thought about this when you were designing your training. Maybe it was a financial initiative that you were looking at, hoping to see some improvement in. And so you've taught some sort of a financial related course, and maybe your measurement is your effective gross income in the organization. Maybe it's total revenue. Because you've talked about some revenue enhancement ideas. Controllable expenses, obviously, if it's an expense-related component. Bottom line in OI is always key. But what about replacements? If you're talking about maintenance training that you've conducted that talk about how to repair versus replace, look at those replacement figures and see if they haven't been improved as a result of that delivery. You guys do a lot of operational related training, so you probably talk about occupancy, but in certain cases, you may want to look more at economic occupancy because your executives are looking at that number. And that may look at certain perspectives like the average rent increasing if you're doing some sort of a push on rents. Maybe you're decreasing in turnover. Collections, maybe you taught a power collections class and you're seeing great results and your collection percentage is improving. You teach a lot of marketing related courses as well, so you're always looking at leasing ratios or traffic is something that you're going to be able to look at. Even curb appeal you can measure. So anything that you can measure, you want to look for those wins and promote those and reinforce them when your training has accomplished something. But what if it hasn't? You might want to be the one to reevaluate the training that hasn't shown results, and you definitely want to be the one to point it out. You don't want somebody else coming to you and saying, hey, what happened? You want to be the one that says, you know what, I didn't get the results from this training initiative that I hoped. Here's some things that I would propose to change, alter, adjust, or add, and let's try to, instill these so that we might make those accomplishments. You're the one that spearheads that, so to speak. And then you always want to look for opportunities to determine where you might need additional training. Look at some of those other measurements and be the hero. Go to them and say, hey, this is something that I would recommend that we do. This is something that I think we can accomplish. This will make you a key player on your team, so to speak. So be the one to bring those into focus as well. So I think we're ready to summarize here. Actually, we'll just run the bases real quick. First base is where you determine if it's a true training need and to see if it fits your company's objectives. Second base is where you design the content, delivery methods, and keep active buy-in and participation from your executives, and definitely sign off from them. And third base is where you're going to hopefully get that visible participation from the executives. And then, of course, we make it home where we see that improved performance, and we're all playing by the same rule book, and our training is successful. So, Jana, you want to share what's next for Let's Talk Training?
Absolutely, and that was a great wrap-up, Lori. Thank you very much. Okay, so our next episode of Let's Talk Training is Wednesday, May 13th. These are always at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Central. So we hope you can join us. You can click on that Register Now button. If it's not active in the recording, it will be active in the slide deck that you're going to get a copy of in the PDF download here. But we're going to talk about how to successfully use shopping reports as a tool to improve performance. Sometimes we tend to look at shopping reports as a way to reward or slap hands, and there's so much value in shopping reports. And it doesn't matter what company you use, and if you use their standard shop or if you customize it, but we're going to teach you some good ideas on how to really make the results of those shopping reports into an effective performance tool that can improve performance. We really hope you can join us there. We'll be looking for active participation, as I know many of you use a bunch of different companies. So other than that, Lori and I want to thank you for joining us. I know you weren't really here on today's episode since we had to do a re-record, but we thank you for watching the recording, and we apologize about the technical difficulties that we did experience during the live episode. So we normally stick around for a few minutes for questions and answers afterwards. We decided that we will both put our email addresses up there. So please, if you have any questions on this topic at all, you feel free to email me at jmumet@gracehill.com or Lori at lallen@gracehill.com, and either one of us would be happy to respond to you and get back to you. So as promised, the PDF download link is in the bottom left corner. And we also encourage you to join our Let's Talk Training Facebook group. This is a private Facebook group that you, once you submit a request, we'll approve it. But we only open it to trainers in the multifamily housing industry. So it's a lot of great information that we share. We even put copies of our slide decks up and things of that nature. And we encourage you to participate, not only join, but to participate and share also. When Lori said earlier, did you scout your competitors? You know, we're all in this together, and that's what this Facebook group really does. It's a way of networking and asking questions and sharing ideas. I mean, how great would it be if you had a question to somebody who implemented the same type of program and they could give you some tips on where it failed or what they had to revise. So that's what this is all about. We're in the same industry. We all kind of have the same common goal. So the networking on this Facebook group can be very valuable. With that being said, I just want to thank you all so much, and we certainly hope to see you on next episode.
Thank you all for coming or watching, and sure enjoyed it, Jana. Thanks for having me as well.
Thank you, Lori.